Okay, I'm going to call to order the April 2nd.
May.
Oh, May. I'm confused.
I know.
It is spring, really spring. May 2nd, 2025, special meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission here convened for our second installment of the, I'll call it the Turf Nutrients Workshop, second of an undetermined number. There will be more yet to come. And today we're featuring Sean Fernandez. I will let Amy introduce Sean. We will plan on future meetings. We had a little bit of trouble scheduling this meeting, both due to the availability of this room and other people's schedules. And we'll just keep trying, and hopefully in the not too distant future we will have further installments. Having said all that, Amy?
Before I introduce our speaker, I'll just tail off of that. I have been going back and forth with Kristen Andres from the Association of Reserve Cape Cod to do a talk about native landscaping. We want to run the full gamut and just let people know kind of what's going on here in Harwich, and for the commission to have a better understanding of practices going on here in Harwich. So the end of today will kind of end with how to get growth without addition of nutrients, and that will lead to our next meeting, hopefully with Kristen, and at an undetermined date in the next month or two, but she's very eager and willing to come in. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sean Fernandez. Sean is the superintendent of Cranberry Valley Golf Course. A lot of times over the years we get questions about, how does Cranberry Valley keep their course? So I thought this was a great opportunity to have Sean come in, and I've been impressed with what Sean has mentioned of their practices there, doing as much possible with as little as possible. So without further ado, Sean.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been, me and Amy have worked very close. I've been here for quite some time, so it's been nice working with Amy back and forth with a lot of conservation stuff that we've talked about and kind of how the town's going to go in the future. But before we go any further, I'll go a little backwards and give you a little history of Cranberry Valley and then kind of where we're at and why we do what we do. Firstly, the golf course was established in 1973. The town decided to build the golf course. It opened in '74. The town's mission statement by what we came up with was basically to provide affordable golf to the residents of the town and still be able to work within the confines of what the town needed, which was if we provided a revenue source, great. If it didn't, it was more about the affordable golf, but we'll work within the confinements of what the town could do. Here we are now almost over 50 years later, and it's been actually a very, let me put it this way, a very lucrative situation for the town and the manner in which we've taken care of the golf course. We've gotten some acknowledgments in the manner in which we've done it. So I try to be I'm not one to toot my own horn, but just to give you a little history of where I am from, I'm actually a native of Harwich. My mom grew up here. Went to Howard High, graduated, went off to UMass Amherst. I got a degree in turf management from Stockbridge, and I got a 4-year degree from plant and soil science from UMass. After that, I was able to build a golf course, Exit 5, Old Barnstable Fairgrounds. I worked with a construction company to build that, and then worked at a couple of private clubs at Wiano Country Club in Osterville, and then Eastwood Ho in Chatham before I got the job in 1999 with Cranberry Valley. My main goal, I've been lucky enough to work at a bunch of different golf courses, and when I came to Cranberry Valley, my goal was, along with the town, was to modernize it because it was still running it in the year 1999 like it was 1970. So I kind of had to bring everything kind of into the year 2000. But by doing that, it allowed me to make some wholesale changes in the way that the maintenance was done and the manner in which we needed to do it to be both functional and to be profitable for the town. So what I ended up doing was we basically stripped it down to the bare essentials, and I started from the ground up. And the first thing that we did was soil tests. So understand that everything that I do is based off of soil tests. I just got done actually doing water tests on my ponds, and I'm waiting for the soil test to come back. Every 2 years, we test both water and soils, so that I know exactly where I stand and what I'm doing. That is my roadmap. It's always been the roadmap and always will be the roadmap as long as I'm there. We do not, at Cranberry Valley, try to reinvent the wheel. And what I mean by that is, the golf course is a living organism, and our goal is to work with the environment as best we can, with less inputs as possible, to provide the product that we need to be able to do what we want on the golf course. And that goes from everything from fertilizer to water to labor to how we do things as far as cultural practices. All that is constantly looked at year in and year out to make sure that we're doing it in the most effective way for the town. So when I first came in, it used to be back then was they were using synthetic fertilizers, which was IBDU, slow release, was their biggest input they were using, and pretty much they ran with IBD slow release on pretty much year in and year out. Well, when I came in, let me back back and go back to soils a little bit, because to understand Cranberry Valley, you have to understand the soils. Most golf courses now are what we call USGA specs, which is basically a sand-based green, and then which you incorporate some type of organic matter into the green so that you can basically keep your pore space. A green is basically like a filter. And what I mean by that is you're gonna put stuff up top and you're hoping that it works down through the soil eventually, and the plant takes it up through the roots. Now, there's a lot of things that come into play in that game when you're doing it this way, but one thing that Cranberry Valley was done in 1973 was it was an old, what we called an old push-up golf course. They had a lot of loam. And when you have a lot of loam, what ends up happening is that filter gets clogged up very quickly. So when I came in the door, they were, the greens were actually in bad shape when they were talking about rebuilding and redoing all the greens. And I said to them at that moment, we need to stop and think about it, because your maintenance practices aren't doing, or your cultural practices aren't doing what they're supposed to do before we go spend a lot of money to do it.
Sorry, I don't know if now is a good time to ask the question, but can you just really quickly explain what you mean by push-up?
So old push-up green is basically just loam. So if you went in your backyard and you wanted to build a green, and you pushed a bunch of loam down, and you just basically pushed it up into a mound and planted grass.
Okay.
So that's kind of what 1973 was. They had a bunch of loam, and so when we built, I'll give you this, when I built Old Barnstable, we actually shaped out a green, and then we mixed our soil, and then we put the soil back.
Okay.
They didn't do that with Cranberry. Cranberry was just basically took a pile of loam, threw it down, shaped it out to what they wanted, and then basically grew grass on top of it. So that's an old push-up compared to USG specs. USG specs has a list of limitations on what type of sand, what type of organic matter, what you can add, what you can't add, to make it so that it will operate the manner in which it was. So when I came to Cranberry Valley, I had to modify what I had to fit that. So what we do in cultural practices is constantly trying to modify the top 4 inches of my soil so that I can continue to maintain it in the manner in which I need to do what I gotta do. So that is kind of a quick synopsis of where Cranberry Valley was and what we're doing now. So in a normal case scenario, we do roughly around 48,000 rounds of golf a year. So 48,000 rounds is a lot of golf. And the switch never gets shut off. And if I give you a number, when I worked at Eastwood Ho, they do about 18,000 rounds. So understand, we're doing 3 times the average. The reason that we can do this is we never shut the switch off. At Eastwood Ho, they can relax a little bit. You don't have many rounds. Me, the switch never goes. The plant constantly got to be turning and burning. It's constantly eating, constantly surviving. I'm constantly trying to keep it what we call on the edge. So in the golf course world, our most important part is the greens. You make your money on your greens. If your greens, which we cut at just about 1/8 of an inch, just about 1/8 of an inch is where our greens are. They stimp out roughly between 9.5 and 10, which is the speed across which the ball travels. So we're constantly manipulating that surface somehow, some way, to get speed and also to keep the health of the plant. Now, I know that a lot of people look at the golf course and say, well, you're always watering, you're always green, there's a lot of inputs other than chemicals and fertilizer that go on that we do and are constantly looking at to make sure that we are providing the product of what the plant needs when it needs it. It's not just fertilizer, phosphorus, and water. There are other atmospheres of what we do. Wetting agents which come into play, which help us make water more available to the plant. Now, if we do what we're doing and we incorporate that into the soil, as the water hits, and the storm we got this morning, I got 1/3 of an inch. Well, most of the time, that rain, you get that hard, fast rain, you only get in really the first 1/10 of an inch, maybe 2/10. That's readable. The rest of it's running off. So we have to do things that allow that water to basically make it sit on the plant and then be able to take up when it needs to. So there's other things that we're doing. We aerify, we overseed. Those things are cultural practices that we do. As we get firmer and the ground firms up, we'll go out and we'll solid time, which is not pull a core. Basically, when I pull a core, it looks like the turkey poop on your lawn. That's aerification, a pulling a core. But we don't just pull cores. Sometimes we just take a rod and poke a hole. What I want to do is I want to make sure that my roots are getting both air and water when they need to. So there's different times we're doing different things. Right now, we're getting ready to thatch, which is I'm going to take a machine and basically go over the top of my green and thin it out. The reason I'm going to thin it out is I want water to get down to where it needs to go. Thatch holds the water. Sometimes I don't want to hold water at the surface. I want water, I try to tell everyone, as nice as I can, but everything that you see on the top is really eye candy. The green grass is really eye candy. Everything from where we live in is where the roots are. Roots is where I'm living right now. So right now, perfect example is we haven't had a lot of rain. We're in a drought. So we're constantly trying to make sure that as we get ready for a long summer of Gulf and the weather, we have to prepare the plant to be able to withstand the elements. We don't want the highs and lows to be so drastic. I want to live kind of in the middle, just a little bit of a blurb. So if your heart jumping all around, you get racing. For me on turf, I want to keep it kind of in the middle. So I don't want to be able to have the highs and lows. I want to build a foundation so that the plant can handle what's coming. And if I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do early in the spring, that prepares me for the summer that I have. Now, the biggest issue that we have at Cranberry Valley, like everyone else and even your home lawn, Mother Nature doesn't play with you. She can be mean, she can be nice. We don't know. I mean, last 10 Saturdays in a row it's rained. So understand, she's gonna, and we're in a drought. So understand that we're constantly looking at how we do things and why we do it. One of the biggest things that we do is we work with the environment that's given to us. So what I mean by that is if Mother Nature's gonna make it cold and raw, then sometimes I'll give you a better one. In the middle of the summer, everyone says, you're watering. We only water our greens less than 6 minutes a night. So that's less than a tenth, really less than a tenth of an inch of water in an evening. And then sometimes in the summertime when the humidity's so high, I won't water, strictly because I can't get rid of it. I can always add water, I cannot take it away. So my goal is always constantly water management. What can we do to make the plant be more conducive to what we want it to do? So our cultural practices, which could be verticutting, we take the dew off the top of the grass. And what we do by putting a wetting agent down, what it does is it draws that moisture off the top of the grass, which then doesn't allow me to get disease. So understand, my biggest disease on my fairways and on my tees is dollar spot. Dollar spot is basically a brown lesion that forms on the top of the plant. When you get too wet and dewy, and we come by with the lawnmower and cut it, we could create wounds on the top of the plant, and then the disease will get into the plant. Well, then that means I gotta go apply something to get rid of the dollar spot. Well, if I get rid of the dew on the top of that grass, and it's dry out, I can actually not have to go apply a chemical to get rid of and also if I apply a little bit of light fertilization, because what the dollar spot's telling me is I'm a little hungry, those are the two signs that will allow me to do a cultural practice, which is to rip off the water off the top, and then I will get less dollar spot. So there are things that we do that we see at certain times, because we've been doing it for so long, that allow us to do the things that we need to do. Our goal, because of the cost of fertilizer, the cost of pesticides, and water, is not cheap. So we try to limit that because we have a budget that we all have to work within in the town. So we constantly are trying to look at our inputs, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and when we need to do it, so that we can lessen those inputs as much as we can. So when it comes to fertilizer, so being that I've been with the town for so long, we saw this organic phase, if you want to call it, coming to us probably 6-7 years into my career here at Cranberry. I'd been at school, and one of my teachers had said to us, If you see what's going on Long Island, understand that Cape Cod's probably gonna be looking at the same thing 20 years down the road. So anyone who's a turf student sitting there going, whoa, I better go check out what's happening in Long Island. Well, what did Long Island have to do? They did the exact same stuff that we're doing now. They had to sewer everything. They had to sewer the whole island. They went to a mostly organic program in the state of New York because of what they were finding was exactly what we're finding now. Everything that we're seeing now has already happened somewhere else. The issue with us on Cape Cod was we pushed everything off. We waited. And because we're waiting, now we're paying for it. Good thing is, it's not too late. I try to tell people this. We are allowed to, the environment will work with you if you work with it. And I'll give you some examples. Cranberry Valley, back when I first got there, was the greens were, you'd hit a ball into the green, the ball would hit and it would explode and there'd be no turf. What was happening was it was sealing off and then the grass was dying from the roots up. So right now, what I'm doing is, and what we've done over the past is, we want to push those roots that we're trying to grow right now, because we just finished aerifying greens, to look for water. So I don't put a lot of water out. The only time I'm actually putting water out is when I'm trying to establish the turf. Once I do that, then I want it to look for water as much as I can until we start getting temperatures that are up near 75, and the roots start to say, well, there's nothing down here for me. I need to come where the water is, because then now I'm starting to put a good amount of water out to keep it alive, to do what we need to do. So we're constantly looking at changing the elements of the inputs day in and day out. Now understand, the good thing is the town has us 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. So it's like your home lawn, it's a living organism. You need to look at it at different times. Now there's different levels of input. A home lawn guy who's taking care of a home lawn does not have to be on someone's lawn every day like we're on Cranberry Valley. The different inputs. And also, Cranberry Valley is trying to make money and be competitive in the golf world. So we also, too, are trying to maintain the golf course at a certain level so that we can pull customers in, along with the daily member fee, to make a wage number that the town would like us to make. So we're constantly looking at everything that we do and how we do it. Pesticides. Pesticide Bureau was in at Cranberry Valley 2 years ago. They usually come down and do an inspection. They go through everything that we own. Every record that I have every record from the first time the golf course opened in a file in my office. And they go through everything, and they look through everything to make sure you're taking it, where you put it, how much you put. Every year, we have to report to the state what we put down, how much we put down, and then also it backs up on the gentleman who sold it to me is also filing the same report, so it matches to what we're doing. So understand, when everyone says, oh, well, they're just willy-nilly. No, we can't. Firstly, it's my livelihood, it's my career. So I would never do anything that would jeopardize that. But more so than that, with the state, they are constantly looking at what we do, how we do it. Same thing with the water management. I'm in the process right now, I'm in a level 2 drought. I already got my letter from DEP. Now, I have a permit, the town has its own permit from what we drink out of. I have a permit with the town to pump water for the golf course. I have a limit on how much I can pump. Now, I have to stay within that limit. But even if I have what we call a drought management plan, in which the town, DEP tells me, enact your drought management plan, in which we came up with them over and over again to say, okay, when you get level 2, you drop rough by 50%. So that's where you start first. That's our biggest turf stand. We have 80 acres of turf. Roughly, I got about 40 acres is rough. The rest of it is greens, tees, fairways, and then some surrounds around the club and the driving range. But we dropped the biggest part first. So that's where we're at now. And as we go forward, if they come and say we're at level 3, then I enact the next level. Same thing with, what was that? That was water, and then pesticide bureau. Oh, pest management practices. So the biggest one that you got to understand is so UMass came out probably early 90s, and we've been a lot of studies done on golf courses. So they came to us and said, not just us, all golf courses, and said, we need some type of plan, because we all do the same thing. You take care of your lawn, you're doing the same thing that I do. You aerify it, you thatch it, you fertilize it, you overseed it. It's the same thing that we do, just at different levels of care. So best management practices basically came out and said to the state, well, we'd like to have this as your guide, so that basically every golf course superintendent or every golf course in the state of Massachusetts basically has some guidelines that they fall within. So some of the rules are, Basically, you have an IPM program, integrated pest management. Basically, we have levels of thresholds, both for fungicides, insecticides, that we look, when we go out and we look at how the golf course responds. And if I go out and I see an insect and I have a level that I need, once it gets to that level, then I'll make a decision if I feel I need to go out curative or preventative. And I'll make that decision as I go. But understand, that falls within the best management practices. Theirs is no fertilizer before April 1st, no fertilizer after November 15th. So we fall within those realms. In those realms, also, they talk about fertilizer. How much we saw that phosphorus was gonna be an issue, so we started taking phosphorus out of our fertilizer. So when I'm overseeding and aerification, I use a little bit of phosphorus to get the plant up and to root. Then after that, it goes to no phosphorus. And I'm 95% organic. The reason we went organic, because we knew it was coming, was we knew that the way that we were just not willy-nilly in the fertilizer, but we needed better control of what we were doing and how we were doing it. So understand, that filter, I have microbes in the ground and a living organism that's living. With a synthetic fertilizer, I wasn't feeding those. So we found this out through soils. I want to feed those microbes because those microbes help me do so much. They break down thatch. They help with disease. So understand, they make the plant a healthier micronutrients that it needs. The iron, the manganese, the phosphorus, everything the plant needs, that microbes will chew in the soil and break those things down so it makes it readily available for the plant. So that's why I say to you, soil tests are so important to us and how we do things. Organic, I made the change a while ago. We increased the budget because it wasn't cheap, and we were able to get to 95%. The other 5% is what we call a slow release fertilizer that gets me the window, because most organics are not gonna last more than a month. So I need something that's gonna last me a little longer, because every time that I go out and fertilize, it's costing me money a little bit because I got people behind me wanting to play golf. So I have a surface that I'm trying to make puttable. Every time I put out organic fertilizer, it gums up the mowers, it makes it harder. So we put in what we call a longer chain polymer along with that organic, it's called the bridge product, that gets me, instead of 4 weeks, it will get me 6 to 8 weeks. So we've done a little of both. It's the best of both worlds. Not all organics are equal. That's the most important thing need to understand. We use a certain type of organic fertilizer that's more turkey poop instead of human, that allows us to control, because they give the bird the food that they're gonna eat, so we know what's going in and we know what's coming out. So we have better control of what we're doing and where we need it. Best management, IPM.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
So you answered one of my questions, was the when you apply fertilizers, and you said nothing between November and April 1st.
Yep.
So can you talk to us a little bit about amounts you put down? Because we see a wide variety of amounts that get put down. So for Cranberry Valley, if you,
So,
not
yep.
homeowners, but.
So I'll give you an idea. So my biggest production, the most that probably sees the most fertilizer, is my greens. Because those are the ones that are turning and burning, what we call chewing and eating and doing. I'm pushing growth all the time. Those will see somewhere between about 3 to 3.5 pounds of nitrogen in the course of a year. Now, most of the time, my rough, which is the 40 acres, doesn't get more than 2 pounds of nitrogen total. I cut it at close to 2.5 inches. I give it a treatment early in the spring, and I give it one treatment in the fall to heal back. That's it. Now, understand, there's areas on the golf course where if I see an area where I don't treat all the rough, but if I see an area where it's been beaten up and it needs a little attention, we'll go out and we'll treat that particular spot. So if I was in a home lawn, I could say that for the average home, if you have a 15,000 square feet, 2.5 to 3 pounds total, and you would have a lush lawn for the whole year, depending on how you want to approach your lawn. There are a lot of different ways. Best management practice gives you a toolbox of how much you can and what you can do. And that's what the best thing about an IPM program and best management practices do. They don't limit you of what you can do. They give you the guidelines on the outside that say, we know that you're gonna have to do these things, and if you can do these with these tools, you're gonna be productive in what you're trying to achieve. I've said this before with fertilizer and more than anything, more is not best. Understand, if you put more down, most likely you're gonna end up with I'm gonna use us as human beings. If it's a living organism, and you, as a person, go out and you overeat, you don't feel the greatest the next day. You feel down, you feel draggy. Same with turf. If I overfeed and I'm getting there, all I'm breeding is more disease, more injury. So if it's sitting there fat and happy, it's not doing what I want it to do. So it's just gonna lay there, and then wetness creeps in, and then I get disease, and then I have to go do something that I don't wanna do, which is then put down a curative application to try to get it back. So that when we say we live on that edge, we live in constantly on that edge, so that we're feeding it what it needs, when it needs it. It gets the amount of water when it needs it. Now, like I said, Mother Nature doesn't, sometimes she'll work with me, sometimes she won't, and you just gotta do the best you can with what you got. And I feel that if you can do that, if we can do it at Cranberry Valley, it can be done pretty much on a home lawn. It's just a level of what you want to do on your lawn when you want to do it. There are gonna be people that don't want nothing to do with it, and they're gonna have to rely, me and Amy have talked about, on the landscapers. And then there's gonna be other people like, well, I don't wanna do much, and there's other ways you can form nitrogen. Microclover. A lot of people are getting into microclover. Microclover is a natural fixation of nitrogen. So basically, if you see your lawn and you got clover in it, it's probably telling you a sign that it needs a little bit of fert, because you got clover, and that clover fixes nitrogen for you so that it's readily before the plant. But if you go and you said, okay, well, I don't want to do much to my lawn, and you go out and you aerify it and you oversee with microclover, and you're willing to let your lawn live somewhere in a 2.5 to 3, not a lot of fertilizer has to be applied, because it's fixating its own nitrogen. It's going in the air, that clover takes it in and then fixates nitrogen for the plant. So there are other things that are out there that will allow you. Same thing with water conservation, wetting agents, dish liquid, dish soap. I tell everyone asks me, if you took a bottle of dish liquid, squirted it in there, and then went on your lawn and sprayed it, and what I mean by this is, if you can do it once a month, we do it on the golf course, we do it on greens once a month, and I do it on fairways once every 3 weeks. And what that basically does is, when you get droughty, the plant knows what to do when it gets droughty. It says, oh my God, it's drought, I gotta slow down. I can't be doing what I was doing before. So what it does, though, is when it does it, starts closing its stomates, which is the little pores on top of the plant. What you want to do is you want that water to sit on that plant, but it's curled up the leaf so that the water's running off, because it's saying I'm droughty. What the soap does is it basically makes the water hit the top of the plant and spread out. And when it spreads out, it allows it to sit on the leaf longer, so then it will take it up into the plant. And all you did was add a little bit of Dawn dish liquid into your hose and sprayed it on your lawn. Now, we'll go out and we'll spray it, and what it does is it basically works through the soil and makes the water more readily available to where the roots are. So as it's moving down through the soil, the plant can then take it up the way it needs to. So understand, and no one's gonna tell you about wetting agents. You know why? You know why? Because it's too easy. You can go down the store and buy a bag of a wetting agent, put it on your lawn, and it will help you manage your lawn, and you will use less water.
So what's an example of, besides Dawn, if you're saying you go down to the store and buy a bag
So
of wetting agent?
I would say go down to Site One and talk to them at Site One. Not too sure what they sell. I have a lot of distributors that come in. We use Vivax, I use Ellipso. There's different ones that do different things. We have wetting agents that will make the top 4 inches of the soil dry, but let that water pass down through and then wait and sit right below those 4 inches, so that the roots won't. So I'm not wet at the surface because I need it to be dry to be able to be puttable, but then also allow me to use the roots and get the water where I need it, where the roots are.
What is the primary component? What are the primary components of wetting agents?
So basically, they're polymers, just like a dish liquid and Dawn dish liquid. It's a polymer, basically, that what it does is it makes, I'm gonna get a little technical. So when it gets really dry, the soil becomes very salty. So you squeeze in the oxygen and the water out of the soil. It becomes, you can see actually crystals of salt. Like if you look in the desert and you go out there and you see those dry soils, you'll see crystals of salt. Basically what's happening is we have acid rain. So they always tell you, and it used to be the old, nothing like Mother Nature rain, because what it does is it changes your pH. That acid rain sends down the negative, that knocks that positive, and it changes it and allows it now to be receptive. So what the wet agent does is basically the same thing, and it uses it over a period of time so that it can be used the way that it needs to. So what you basically changing the negative to a positive. That's how simple it is. But we're doing it in a manner and a longer chain so that we can have it there so we don't have to go out every day or every week. We do it over a longer period of time. So in your home lawn, if you went down and got a bag of, I'm trying to think, Aquaid is some of the older stuff that we used to use, and you take a granular bag and you just do your lawn, or we use Vivax. I can't speak to what the homeowner can get because I'm getting it in the golf course business. But if you got a wet agent and put it down on your lawn, you manage your water better. Whatever water you are putting out would then stay where it needs to be a little longer, so that 1/10 of an inch that we just got, or the 2/10 of an inch we just got today, instead of being gone tomorrow, it's now gonna sit down in the soil and then slowly seep down to the soil to where you want it to sit and sit there for a little bit. And not long, but enough so the plant can take it up instead of just running through like a sieve and gone. We have very sandy soils here. So what I do, and now understand, me at Cranberry Valley is old push-up. What they do at Captain's Golf Course, which is 100% sand, that stuff flies through there. He's watering twice as much as I am because I have loam. My loam holds moisture. I have a problem of holding too much water sometimes. So what we do is why we go out and do cultural practices is so that we can control where the water goes when it goes. And that is what works into the irrigation system that I know a lot of people had questions. They see a new irrigation coming up on for Cranberry Valley. Back when I first got here, the system that was in the ground was 35 years old. It was past its prime. PVC pipe didn't make it. So now it was leaking. So you've got this precious resource that we have to use, and we don't want to waste it. We changed the system out, and we went to what we call high-density poly pipe, which is like gas line pipe. They welded it together. And the reason we went with that was so that we could get the length and time. They said it could last us 75 years in the ground, which means I don't have to dig it up. But what I am replacing are the heads and the wire to the heads, because the wire is 20 years old, and after 20 years in the ground, it starts to break. I'm losing the continuity in the wire to be able to control the head in the manner in which I need to. And then the head itself is just a plastic head, so all the guts. So purposely, on a golf course, I only want to water the green. This is the green. I have a head that goes from here to here. I don't want to water anything behind it. I only want to water the green. Well, now it's going past the set points. So now I'm watering more in areas where I don't want it. So I'm not efficiently using my tool to the best of its ability. That is why we're changing it out. Any questions? I know I speak
I
fast
have-
and I
yeah.
speak a lot.
Lots of questions.
So I think what we should do
Yeah.
is what we normally do,
Yeah.
which is let you go.
I have
Amy,
real quick ones, yeah.
And then commissioners, and then open it up to whoever else is here. And it looks like there's no one online, it's just people in the room, so
It's okay. This is all really informational, so.
go ahead.
So for people at home who might be watching this at some point, what are some questions that, if you want to be a responsible homeowner and be as ecologically friendly as you can, but you still, you have some grass and you may want to keep it so it's not just a dust bowl in
Cape
your
Cod lawn.
yard. Cape Cod lawn, what are some questions that homeowners should be asking their landscapers?
So the first thing is, and I always say this for the most part, the first question should be, they should understand they need to do a soil test. Every property, your property to her property to his property is gonna be different. You could have an old push-up where they use a lot of loam. You could have something near the beach that's very sandy. So you need to know what you're dealing with. Your
Yeah.
pH levels are huge on what inputs are gonna be in and out. Now, if you wanna lessen the amount and you just want a Cape Cod lawn, I tell everyone, there's only really I would say 3 times you should fertilize. In the spring, you come out, aerify and thatch your lawn. Those are the 2 things. You should definitely thatch. If you don't want to aerify or poke a hole in the ground, you can wait till the fall. But you should definitely thatch your lawn and get all that dead grass and everything out. Then, at that same time, you should seed. Quality seed is huge. You shouldn't just go down to, nothing against Ace and all those stores, but I wouldn't go pick up a bag of seed on the shelf. Most likely that bag's been sitting there probably for well over 3 to 5 years. And seed is no good usually after 3 years. That seed viability is no good. So go to a local Site One or something like Northeast Nurseries that has good quality seed, and it ain't gonna be cheap. Understand that what we pay for seed, I'll give you this, when I first got to Cranberry Valley, we were seeding we were only seeding greens. Well, understand, the average turf plant lasts 3 to 5 years. So if I'm waiting for that grass to grow to the left and grow to the right to establish a new plant, and I'm gonna have thin spots. I need competition to be at its best. So what I need to do is constantly plant seed. So when they were only seeding once, I'm seeding everything twice a year. So I seed in the spring and I seed in the fall. And the reason I'm doing that, I'm gonna lose turf. That's not the question. If you're a homeowner, you're gonna lose turf. It's what you do after you lose turf that makes the difference on what you're gonna do. So you should go out and thatch, overseed, and then put down some type of starter fertilizer. Somewhere around 1/2 pound to 3/4 pound. Sometime around, and Mother Nature will give you the signals. I always tell everyone, if you're seeding the lawn, you're not putting any chemicals on your lawn, you just want it straight, just natural Cape Cod lawn, and you don't care that it's not what we call a monostand or just one type of grass. It was me, sometime around the end of April, after you thatch and clean it up, put down some seed in the lawn after you thatch, because you've made some grooves in the lawn, seed that, put down about 3/4 pound of nitrogen, and that will get you through to get going. Then in the middle of the summer, the plant's gonna when you get up, that temperature gets up near 75, it's gonna start to think, oh, I'm not getting the water that I need, I'm gonna go dormant. At that point, you gotta understand, and I try to tell most people, is it's gonna go dormant on you, but you gotta keep it alive. And what I mean that is, even if you're watering every other day for 15 minutes, and it's not enough, but it still looks decent, the grass. I'm not talking that gray, going dead brown. I'm talking still looking decent. That's fine. She'll come back. And you're gonna overseed anyways in the fall. So you wanna make it through the toughest times. Then when you get to the end of August, about the last 2 weeks of August, first two weeks of September, again, you wanna air fine and thatch again. And then you're gonna do the same thing you did in the spring. You're gonna overseed and you're gonna put down another 3/4 pound. And then right before the end of the season, you're gonna do one more, what we call late fall feed. It's not gonna be used during the wintertime. It's gonna be there for the spring. As the plant wakes up, it has some nutrients to take in. So that when you get to the beginning part of what we just went through, that 70-degree weather, it had something to go get. And you're not constantly trying to put something out. Those are really, you could get away with that and have a decent, what we call a decent Cape Cod lawn. And then when you do overseed, you don't have to seed you could go with microclover. You could go with different varieties. I mean, a Cape Cod lawn, to me, fescue is very drought tolerant. You can use some clover. Kentucky bluegrass is what they used to use old. Ryegrass. My lawn is all ryegrass and fescue. I know that for sure because I know it can make it through the summer. It's drought tolerant as much as I can.
One other question from me. So not all soil tests are created equal.
Correct.
Where should people get them?
So, I was talking to my assistant this morning, we were having this conversation. The hardest thing is on Cape Cod, we get our soil tests. Now, understand, I have a guy that comes in, and we go to UMass and URI. Those are the places that we get our tests done for the golf course, and it's part of what we do for a business. So I'm doing a sales rep comes in, I'm paying for the test, but he sends it to UMass or URI. Now, ideally, there would be nice if Barnstable County could do it, and do it in the manner in which maybe the samples would come to Harwich, and then Harwich, just like we do the water quality, that the Harwich would then send the tests up and then get those tests back, and then you can go that way so that you know what you're getting for a test. Now, we test a little bit different. We ask for other aspects. I'm looking at more than just the general soil test. I'm looking at a lot of cation exchange and a lot of other things that kind of play into what I'm doing because our turf is so fine in the care that we do that we need to look at every input that we're doing. A home loaner, if he's just doing a Cape Cod lawn, just pH really, and phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. If he can look at those three things, and that most lawns for a Cape Cod lawn would be fine. But if you do the county, that would be, I don't know how, all of a sudden the county starts getting 150 soil tests a day, it might be a little different, so.
Yeah.
Ideally, I said maybe there's a job opportunity for someone to open up a lab on Cape Cod, but at this point, I think the only spot you can go to is
Is UMass.
either UMass, URI, or you can go to the county. And I think the county sends it to UMass, but I'm not too sure.
Okay,
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
thank you. Mark?
Fantastic presentation,
It
thank you.
sure is.
Thank you very much.
Outstanding. I'd
Sounds
like,
lucky to have you, Sean. I'll tell you what.
Only for a couple more years. I said to everyone, I've been lucky, and I'm gonna share some stuff with you in this. Back when I went to school, I never thought, I knew I wanted to be a I was going to school to be a business major. Was going to Eisenberg to be a business major, and I found out real fast that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I had worked at Cranberry Valley at 16, was a kid that just ran around and weed whacked trees and bunkers. So when I went home and I told my mother I wanted to grow grass for a living, she looked at me like I had 4 heads. And I said, it's something, and golf was just taking off. I said, but the lucky enough for me is I've had some great superintendents in front of me that have led me to where I'm at today. And what I mean by that is everyone has done it different. This is the manner in which I choose to do it. I've chosen to use the knowledge that I have and the past practices that other guys have done to be able to do what I do at Cranberry Valley. And the town was lucky enough that I walked in the door and they were willing to give me the keys to the car. Because if they didn't give me the keys to the car and listen to what I was saying, this might not be the same situation. The lucky, and this is where I'll toot my own horn the only time, we've been lucky that Cranberry Valley was one of the first municipal golf courses, and the way that the town has maintained it, it has allowed the reputation to be as lucrative for the town as the golf course itself. We try to check every box for the town, and I'll give you a quick story, was the town of Barnstable chose to, 3 years ago, just about 3 or 4 years ago now, decided they wanted to go 100% organic in the town of Barnstable. So instead of going to the superintendent and having a discussion, or the gentleman who I used to work for, they just said, nope, that's it, you gotta go 100% organic. Not knowing what they were doing was understanding that the value asset that you have in your golf course is now no longer that value asset. Because when you allow certain things to happen on a golf course, it takes longer to get there. Like, I got to Cranberry Valley, it didn't turn over. It took me 5 years just to get the greens, which are only 3 acres, to respond to the manner in which I was. I'm at 26, and the golf course is finally starting to. Last year, Golf Week rated Cranberry Valley as one of the top 10 golf courses in Massachusetts that you can play. And that kind of, all of a sudden now, the door has swung wide open and everyone's coming, which is good for the town of Harwich. But it adds, again, the town has listened to what we wanted to do in the manner in which we've done it, and it allows us to continue to succeed. And like I try to tell most people, less input can happen. You can have a great lawn and still have less inputs. Just understand, you need to be looking at your lawn and not just saying, oh yeah, it looks good, driving down the driveway. You need to pay a little bit more attention, because it is a living organism. You remember, I always tell them, and the biggest one is water. People don't understand. You can always add water, but you can't take it away. Once turf goes to anaerobic conditions, which means lack of oxygen, you are now creating a problem for the turf to live. So, perfect example, this past winter, we didn't have a lot of snow. We had water and rain. But I got areas on my golf course where it basically killed turf on the golf course due to the fact was it dried out my turf in the middle of the winter because I had nothing there. Dried it out, and then the ice and everything else. So now we got to go out and air fire and overseed. But again, it's what we do for a living, so it's easy in that aspect for us.
you answered 10 questions in your presentation, and if your presentation could be trapped and videoed and made available to the townspeople at any point, and every property owner ought to listen and take the advice and understand the value and the benefit to your experience and your education, would be a major step in this whole situation.
So, me and Amy have had numerous conversations, and the hard one is, and I agree with 100%, because we talked about Channel 18, in which we should sit down and have a discussion in which me and Amy and Jamie get together and we just have a
Do
conversation.
an interview.
An interview in which we talk about this stuff. Because the hard thing is this, no matter what we do in Harwich, education is going to be better for us than just saying, don't do it.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is, we're all human beings, and we all grew up with a parent that told us, don't do it.
Worked out
So-
pretty well, huh?
It didn't work out well. What is the first thing we do? We went and did it. So you're gonna get more if you tell them why they should be doing things, showing them. Like I said before, I have no problem. I will gladly, during the wintertime, I've said this before, I'm getting ready to leave, but as we get closer, use me as that resource. If you need me to go to your property and tell you, hey, this is kind of what I'm seeing, this is what my eyes see, this is what I would anticipate, because understand, that's what I get paid to do. Anticipate problems before they become problems. Solve those problems before they become problems. Your home lawn is the same way. If you're doing something that's detrimental to your property, most likely it started a year or 2 years earlier and you didn't see it. And now you're dealing with the outcome. So before those become problems, you can solve those problems, most likely aerifying it, thatching it, overseeding it. Those little inputs, which means that then I don't have to spray a pesticide, I don't have to put out. There's a lot of things that you can do that can change the way you do your property. I was just talking to Warren behind me, using what we call one-and-done fertilizer. Now, what a one-and-done fertilizer basically is a long-change formula that you can put down early in April, and that will last you the whole season. It breaks down over a period of time through water and through heat. There are fertilizers that are out there that do different things. You just got to do a little bit of homework. I always equate what I do on the golf course to the way of running your car or your home. You got to do the things to take care of it. If you're not doing it, it's not going to get you the result that you need. That's how simple it is. And I try to tell people, well, if you put gas in the car, you'll get a lot further. If you take care of your lawn and you do the things, it'll get you further down the road. So,
By the way, this is being taped.
Well, I realize that, but I mean, if it was just specialized.
Specialized.
So somebody could find it, sit down and absorb the context of everything. One quick question.
sure.
Volume of water. What actually is the allotment of volume you're permitted for?
I'm allowed 23.5 million gallons in a course of a year, but I'm also allowed 100,000 gallons every day over that if I had to, which would give me 43. But we pump somewhere between 23 and 25 on the average. We try to be as minimalistic as possible.
Do you know what your average is per acre?
Oh, per acre, so
About.
that's hard to say because it's over an 8-month period.
Yep.
So if I mean, at any one time, I'm putting down less than 1/10 of an inch of water per 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
I can give you that because I know, the reason I can tell you that is I have a computer in my office that basically tells me how much water, like, let me put it this way. A normal irrigation cycle for me in your home would be 15 minutes per station. So every station that I have is set up for 10 minutes. I have a 100% meter where I go in and I change that. So right now, I may be putting 10 minutes, but by the time I get to the middle of June, I'm only doing 6 minutes. So I'll drop that meter down because too much hurts me. Too little hurts me also. So we constantly trying to find that balance between. But on the average, in the middle of the summer, I may pump, over a course of a night, I might pump 250,000 gallons. But then there might be, I might not pump for 3 days after that. Now, understand, when we talk water, we tested our water just now, and I'm waiting for the results to come back. But I have 4 ponds on my golf course. One is an irrigation pond that we pump from, that we fill up with our well, that we pump from. Now, that was starting to show algae blooms. Middle of the summer, I was getting algae bloom. So I started, when Chris Clark was the town administrator, I had a long conversation with him and said, listen, this is our one source of water. We got to make sure that this is working where we need to. So at that time, we did some research, and we had a company called John Todd Ecological come in and give us a quote and what it would take to turn it over. When it came back, they said I was high in manganese and high in iron, which we all know in Harwich, we have hard water. The issue that we faced was we were getting algae blooms. So they were saying, okay, well, why do we think we're getting algae blooms? Well, there's no turnover in the pond. So what we said was, okay, we didn't spend the $50,000. What I told Chris was, I think we should do it this way. So what I told him was, let's put 2 fountains in the pond. Let's put in some bafflers in the bottom of the pond, which add oxygen to the soil, to the water. And then let's add some beneficial bacteria to the pond to help eat up the organic matter that's fallen in from the sides. By doing that, I moved the needle. So if the needle was here, I moved the needle a little bit. So now it's been 6 to 7 years, and it's starting to show My pH is 6.5, whereas my pH was more like 4.5. So now understand, when I put that water out on that golf course, I need that pH to be at a certain number so that the plant can take it up. If it's too acidic, it's not gonna want it. So we're constantly changing the inputs as we go. So ideal situation is I only have a small pond that only holds about 1 million gallons. I don't have Hinckley's Pond or Long Pond. I don't have those. So what we did was we did it on that pond, and then we took that same program and pushed it out onto the golf course and to the other 3 ponds. And so what we do is, to even help me even further, is I fill the pond up, and then I pump it down as low, almost as low as I can, and then I fill it back up. I used to just turn the water on every night. I don't do that. I turn it over a period of time. So that way I'm it's taking me longer to fill it up, but I'm using the water that's there, so I don't get those huge algae blooms that just water sitting there. I'm constantly using it up, turning it over, using it up and turning it over.
All set?
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm just blown away. I mean, any questions that I have, you've already answered. And to Mark's point, just brilliant presentation. My
Oh.
hat's off to you.
Thank you.
I-
Try.
Yeah, I don't think you should leave. I don't know where you're going, but I don't think you should leave.
Italy's calling my name.
Yeah, your credit to the golf, it's well known. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
It has a wonderful reputation.
Thank
I
you.
know that much. No, you answered all my questions. I just have a weird question, which is, how do you take the dew off the,
A rope or a chain on the back of a golf cart. So you basically go down 2 sides and you just drive down the sides and it just knocks all the dew off.
okay. I can sleep tonight now.
Yeah. It makes a difference. I try to tell
Thank
people it
you,
makes a
but-
difference.
Yeah,
It just drops it down more?
So what happens is basically it drags it and
Yeah.
basically the water gets kicked up and then it doesn't form a dew, it basically dries faster.
Oh.
So when you get that morning dew
Yeah, yeah.
on the grass, that morning dew sometimes
Yeah.
can be like it rained all night.
Yeah.
By just taking that rope and knocking it off the plant,
Disturbing it, yeah.
it makes it dry faster in the sun. When I was 16, that's the first time I ever did it.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand it. Now, obviously, 26 years later, I get it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
That's
welcome.
Brilliant. It's very informative.
Thank you.
Sean, I got a question. One of the concerns, I guess the main concern this commission has is getting the chemicals into our drinking water, percolating down.
Yeah.
And when you take a soil sample, how deep do you go down with it?
So normally, we go down, we test at different levels. So understand, I told Amy, and then we've had wells, and so if you're really looking to find out exactly that question, 1971, 72, there's a Cape Cod study. You can look it up and you can read through it. The golf course business was before my time. I was only, I think, 10 at that time. But they did a study and they went around to golf courses on the Cape and they tested exactly what you were talking about. And in that study, they found that the turf plant itself, if done right, it will use up what it's being used, and again, as the cycle goes. The only thing is, it's the inputs of us putting them out at the right time when the plant needs it. I'm not gonna go out and spray if I know it's gonna pour out, because then I know it's gonna leach, I know it's gonna run. But if I go out and I do it in the manner in which I'm supposed to, the plant will use up what we're doing. Now, understand, 1970 and now, perfect example is Captain's Golf Course right now, with Pleasant Bay Alliance, is testing their wells on a regular basis. And they went out and you can test, and you can go to Pleasant Bay Alliance and see exactly what they're finding, where they're finding it. And I can't speak to that because I'm not part of that study, but we constantly, and what we say this, what they put down in 1970 and what we're putting down now, the chemistries are so far distant, it's unbelievable. When I was younger and just got into business, you may use a case of a certain chemical. Now we're using 0.25 because we found out so much more about the plant, the manner in which it needs to be treated, and how we need to go about treating it. So that the inputs are far less than we need to.
The bottom line is that if all this stuff is applied correctly, it shouldn't be an issue getting in the groundwater.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, and the reason I say that is just like you eating. If you're eating everything the way you should be eating everything and everything, you're gonna feel good, everything's gonna be good. But if you go out and do something you probably shouldn't have done, the next day you're not gonna feel so good, and then that's when you start having issues. Same thing with turf.
The whole key here is education.
Education, education, education. Because 90% of it can't go be put out by itself.
Yeah.
Someone has to put it out.
Right.
So if you're educated in what you're doing and how you're putting it out, And a home lawn really isn't, you don't need to know a lot. The bag tells you everything you need to know. And I try to tell most people, just because it says use 3/4 of a bag, and you say, well, I got a bag, I don't want a quarter of it to sit there, let me just throw the rest of this out there. That's not good. You know what I mean? I'd rather have you go with a half a bag and then come back 3 months later and put another half a bag down than I would do to put the whole bag down at once.
Okay, well, I have a few questions.
Sure.
First one is, you mentioned IBDU at the beginning.
Correct.
What's IBDU?
IBDU is a fertilizer that, the technical term is it's a long chain type of, they basically, I'll give you this. They take a plastic pill, basically a piece of plastic, and they basically wrap fertilizer around each coating. And they make the pill, as the pill gets older, bigger. Then you go out and you fertilize. Then as it melts down due to water and temp, each thing releases a little bit of fertilizer. So it's controlled fertilizer over a period of time. So the manner in which we do it now, which is very similar, we still use that same technology. It's a plastic pill or some type of carrying mode, because they've used corn cob, they've done other stuff that they use. But you basically encapsulate it and then put fertilizer around it, dip it in, do it again, and then that will last. So what we say is, you put the fertilizer out in water insoluble, that is the fertilizer that's the long chain fertilizer. Insoluble fertilizer, which means it's gonna take a while to get to that point. Then you have water soluble, which means as soon as it hits the ground, that dew releases a little bit of fertilizer. So IBDU is what, when it first came out, was great, because you could get 12 weeks and not have to worry about applying anything. You could put it down once and it would just sit there and wait and put it out.
So is that something you're using now?
No, I use organic. That was what they did in 1970.
You have other ways of having slow-release
Correct.
fertilizer that doesn't involve dumping plastic on the
Correct.
lawn.
And why we went away from, and now are using more organics, and then using some other urea-based carrier that's gonna allow me to get that little bit of change. Can't get 12 weeks, but if I can get 8, I'm happy.
Great. So in your soil testing, are there biological things that you're looking at? Are you identifying what organisms are in the lawn? Or is it mostly inorganic chemicals and organic chemicals that you're testing for?
Correct.
Are you identifying specific organisms
No,
in
not-
the turf?
No, we don't look at organisms, we're looking at particular, basically inert, most of the time. We're not looking for certain organisms. I can tell you, I'd find 90, you'd find, right now, I could tell you right now what I have in the soil. Most likely, it's there. It overwinters all winter and then starts to come out at a certain time of the year. So I know it's already prevalent. What I try to do is try to limit that so that when it gets to a certain point, then that threshold says, perfect example is dollar spot. June 15th, guarantee you, humidity's gonna climb to about 75%, and you're gonna find dollar spot on turf. You know why we know that? Because it happens every year. So I don't even have to look for it. But what I need to do is, prior to June 15th, is start doing some cultural practices to try to limit the amount of water that I have out there, and that the plant is healthy, so that I can go away from that.
Okay, so I just want to follow up on something Wayne was asking you about, which is leaching into the drinking water. I think a major concern is not just drinking water, it's also what gets into our freshwater ponds and our saltwater embayments, which are primary reason, the saltwater embayments, why Cape Cod towns are being forced, not doing it willingly, forced to sewer. So I guess I was gonna ask the question of how much of this stuff leaches below the roots, and I understand your assertion that you only feed the plants as much as they can use and no more, and there's no reason why you would do that, but I think people may be looking for more reassurance that, and it's a statement more than a question or whatever. How can you reassure people that you know that there isn't excess nitrogen and excess phosphorus leaching below the root zone in your turf? And, I mean, your example of you having algae blooms in your irrigation ponds, I don't know, but it suggests to me that there's phosphorus leaching out of your turf and getting into your irrigation ponds and feeding the algae blooms. Typically in other natural ponds,
So,
there's phosphorus that gets into the pond water from some source or another. A lot of it is septic systems, but it's also potentially phosphorus-containing fertilizers, which you now are saying you apply twice a year when you overseed. So how do you know
so,
that that isn't driving algae blooms?
so I can tell you I can tell you straight by my soil test. I can tell you right by my soil test what's coming in and what's going out. I can tell you by the totals of nitrogen that I have when I go next to my pond and I drop that soil test in and it comes out, I know exactly where it's going. The second one that you don't understand is, and what people don't understand is organic matter. So leaves blow into your pond. So around my irrigation pond, it's now become, it was man-made. So if it was man-made and it's lined, why would I have an issue with my irrigation pond? Because the trees around it have now made it an environmental situation in which now it is an environmental pond, that I have to keep everything away from it. So because of that, I have leaves and litter that falls into the pond. Now, I can't go there and clear it. There's a buffer zone. I can't touch it. So now how am I supposed to maintain that pond? So, go ahead.
So you're saying the pond is lined so it doesn't get groundwater flowing into the pond?
There is some water that comes up. There is a liner in the pond from back in 1970 when it did. Now, I can't guarantee you that line, I can go in there and see if that line is still actually active. But what I'm saying to you is that that pond, and I have 3 other ponds that aren't lined on the golf course that are what we call spring fed, that has the same problems that my pond has, and that's just leaf material and growing around. Now, for us, we also, around our ponds on the golf course, I leave a buffer zone of almost 13 to 20 feet from the turf to the pond, and I let it grow natural. Tall, weeds, everything growing in it. We don't treat nothing around that pond. So that could catch anything that's coming off the turf, would then feed that before it got to the pond.
So one of the things that people worry about algae blooms in natural ponds, one of the things that is suggested sometimes to address algae blooms is in fact water removal, removing a significant amount of the water in the pond in order to get rid of some of the phosphorus nutrients, which isn't practical most of the time around here.
No.
But my question to you is, do you think that because that's exactly what you're doing, you're drawing your pond down and then pumping groundwater, which presumably does not have a lot of nutrients in it, back into the pond, do you find that suppresses algae blooms in your pond?
I can't, that's a hard one to answer because I've done so many other things. By adding oxygen, more so than anything, what I wanted the pond to do was act like its normal self. So by adding oxygen into the pond, basically what I was trying to do was get that organic matter to turn and burn faster. So it would break down the organic matter that's in there in the weeds, in the algae, so that it doesn't have a chance to establish itself. A lack of movement in the pond, and I found on the golf course, was the biggest issue. That is why we added air into the pond and then added the water in the fountains, to move the water as much. Now understand, I don't have any houses around Cranberry Valley. There's not
So
many.
it's not a septic problem.
It's hard to say. Like I said, I test my water, and I'm about to get my test back, and I can show you the sample, and you'll see that there's not a lot of nitrogen in it. I don't have a nitrogen and phosphorus problem. What I have a problem is leaf problem.
Well-
You can see the pH has changed a little bit to the high, because we're treating it, but most of my problem was leaf, litter, coming from around the pond, making it stagnant. So we said, we're gonna turn it and turn it and turn it. And then we put microbes in to help chew up some of those organic matters.
So I have one other question.
Sure.
And then we can open it up, but you mentioned that Captain's Golf Course is actually engaged with the Pleasant Bay Alliance.
Correct.
So I'm having a little problem with geography here. Are you saying that Captain's is in the Pleasant Bay watershed and Cranberry Valley is not?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
So let me tell you, so when you go, if you were to go towards East Harwich, I happen to live there, and I happen to live at one of the highest points, the water actually underground goes from Brewster and heads straight towards, towards Pleasant Bay. So then, yep, and then everything from this area actually heads towards Harwich Port. And then the last one is North Harwich, actually heads towards West Harwich area, the slope.
Herring River.
So understand, Cape Cod was built by a glacier. That glacier went basically down the middle of the cape. Your highest point is almost in the middle of it. So everything kind of drains from the top down to the bottom. So if you look at it in that, when you look at the lens of the water and the way the land is, that's pretty much how it shakes out. So Pleasant Bay approached me, but I'm not in their lens, so I didn't have to follow, or at least fall into their requirements, because I'm not in that end. But if there was a area where they come to here with me, I would then fall into that. So a perfect example is sewers. You gotta get rid of the gray water. We talked to the town a long time ago and said, I can get rid of gray water. I have a golf course. We can gladly take all that water right on the driving range. I'll water the driving range, or you can put a big leach field right in there and let all that water just seep down through. There's things that golf courses can help with that people don't understand, and not just be that playing zone where everyone says, oh, it's just golf. There's a lot of things that we can add to the situations.
How is that working out? Yarmouth does that, right? They pump out on those big fields
On
and
the-
stuff?
yeah,
on
the
big
golf course, yep, it's
Is it
called,
working out well for them?
it's worked out well.
Yeah.
Their plant is right around the corner, and that's where they get rid of their water.
Yeah.
Oh, so instead of direct, like, what do they call it? Recharge, pumping it directly in the groundwater, they
Right.
pump it onto the greens?
So what they do is they pump it into the irrigation system, and they use the gray water to run their systems. For me, it's hard to do it on golf course for us, because we're not open year round. So to understand that, now what are you gonna do with that water all winter?
Yeah.
So ideally for us is the driving range. Basically clear the driving range, build a big leach field, just sit there and, because all they're doing is hitting balls on it. And then the water comes in and just basically leaches down through like a big filter, cleans the water as it goes through, and enters back into the aquifer. Now, I'm gonna say a couple of things. If we in 1970 had decided that we wanted to follow through with sewers, we'd be a lot better off now than we are now. And the reason I say that is, when you're a sand-based island, sooner or later, when you have sewers, they worked for a while, sooner or later, we knew we were gonna have issues. And we just happened to be at that point.
You mean septic systems, private ones, not sewers?
So, I'm
Sewers-
septic, yes, sewers are
Right.
in a sand-based situation which we're in, basically, we dig a hole and,
Right.
just like they did early in the back in the days, there was, off the golf course, off the 8th hole, there was a big area, and the pump trucks would just go,
Yeah.
dump the sewage right there, and it would basically filter out and go down through. So, understand, if we had done this a long time ago, the issues that we're having now wouldn't be so prevalent.
Right.
We would have been a lot further ahead of the game than we are now. It's just the nature of politics and Cape Cod.
Lack of education.
Okay, so are there comments or questions from the public in the room?
Sorry for such a long conversation.
Oh, it was good.
Stay here all afternoon,
Going,
I'm
yeah.
fascinated.
Tell us more.
What do we have? Yes, we do.
Thank you, Sean.
Oh, no problem, pal.
Tremendous amount of information for us. Just a couple, just quick technical questions.
Just Patrick, I'm sorry.
Oh, Patrick Ott in East Harwich. You want my social number too?
Hand it out.
Just the last 4 digits.
Yeah, right. When you say 3.5 pounds or 5 pounds of fertilizer per square
For 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet,
Yep.
I didn't know that reference.
And the greens is the most that it gets. And each level of greens get the most, fairways get probably somewhere around 2.5. Tees are roughly around 3, rough is around 2. So each complex needs it, because it's longer turf, depending on what you're trying to do with the turf, the elements change. And the different forms. Sometimes it's granular, sometimes it's liquid, so it's more readily to the plant. In the middle of the summertime, it gets too hot, I'm not gonna put down a granular fertilizer because I'm gonna have humidity, I'm gonna burn. So we'll do a liquid treatment at that point. So what we call spoon feeding.
You said you do soil tests, and you also test your water, your
Correct.
ponds?
Every
What
2
What
years.
is being tested in the ponds?
So we're just doing a regular water test, basically checking pH and iron and manganese.
Okay.
We check the levels for iron, manganese, phosphorus, calcium, basically a gambit of what could be in my water.
And how does that impact the golf course, those various ions?
So it depends. Every area of the golf course is different. What happens on the first green could be different than what's happening on the second.
All right.
But understand, we try to make it, so when I do go out and put something out, I want to make sure that what I'm putting out is readily available to the plant. And if my pH is off in the water, it's not going to allow me to take what I'm trying to do for the plant, to take it up the manner which it needs. So we're trying to make sure that that pH isn't too far off. So I'm close to the 6.5, which is where I want to be, and not 4, 4.5.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We also check for salt in the pH. Salt is not my friend.
Yeah,
So,
right.
understand, there's a lot more other things. And I can forward my water test and soil test to you if you'd like to look at it. I mean, it's up to you. You guys want to see what we're doing and how we do it.
Interesting, good.
Can I just interject a follow-up question
Sure.
here? Which is, do you account for the amount of phosphorus and nitrogen in your irrigation pond water that you're irrigating with when you report the total amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that you're putting on?
So there's no way to account for how much I'm putting out. I can't measure that. I can't measure the water to know exactly how much nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium is in that water.
Aren't the tests telling you how much?
No, the test is giving me a range. It's not giving me the exact amount. It's giving me a range of, okay, we're finding that you have 40 parts per million. You need to live somewhere in this realm. So then I make my adjustments based off of that. Just like drinking water, when he says there's so much, it's a range that they're looking at. They're not looking at a particular certain amount. So it's telling me I'm living in this range. Perfect example is for salt. If my salt is really high, I need to then put some calcium in there to try to bring that down a little bit, because that's not gonna be good for my turf. So I'll go out and we'll make an adjustment in that aspect. But we live in a range. That's what they give you. Soil tests are all done in ranges. And you live in that range. This is what they find. This range to this range.
Too
you
high,
live-
too low, or right in
Too
the
high,
middle.
too low, you wanna live somewhere in the middle, as much as you can. But we can't test in that aspect yet. One day, maybe.
You obviously know who I am and my citizens' petitions on a town warrant to limit the application of fertilizers as well as pesticides. How will that, well, and all of that's coming from my understanding of the environment, okay? What's the number? I wish I had it off the top. 29 million pounds of fertilizers are used on Cape Cod. Huge amount, okay? Just a big number, I guess I can't qualify it as huge, but it's a big number. The significant deterioration in our embayments, 90% decline in our embayments, 60% decline in our ponds. Right now, there is a red tide warning for Pleasant Bay, right? Hinckley's Pond on Christmas had an algae bloom, a cyanobacteria. So our environment's in trouble, right?
There are warning signs. I wouldn't say trouble, because just like I said to them, you're seeing warning signs telling you
Yeah.
that you need to do something.
Right.
Now,
Good.
understand, those same warning signs should have been taken care of in 1970.
I wish,
But now that we're at this point, we're a little late to the game.
yeah.
It's not too late, but understand that if we continue down the path that we're on, and we know that that will change. So
Right.
we understand as good citizens in what we're doing, we definitely need to lessen the amount of inputs.
Right.
And that's what we try to do in the golf course world, and that's what homeowners should probably start to thinking
Yeah.
about their property.
And you've spoken very well about the golf course and your limits and your operating parameters.
Correct.
So my question to you, if these citizens petitions pass, how will it affect you and your job and the golf course?
So understand that I answer to, I work for the town of Harwich, but I answer to the state of Massachusetts as far as pesticide bureau, DEP, and everything that we do. So as long as the town of Harwich is continually part of the state of Massachusetts, and they have not asked to, I'll give you this, Nantucket and Orleans both asked the state of Massachusetts. to
Eastham and Wellfleet as well now.
also have asked to regulate their fertilizer.
Right.
What people don't understand is the moment that you ask to be harder than what the state is doing, you are asking the state to basically take over all responsibility to what's gonna happen in the town of Harwich. The state will no longer, if they call up and say, I have a problem, they won't come down here. You know why? Because you asked to be the ruler of the law. They are no longer the cop for you. So you are going to do it on your own. And what people don't understand is, the last thing you want is the town of Harwich to be that officer. You know why? The state of Massachusetts has access to UMass, to URI, to the latest and greatest and the chemistries that are happening. So if you have that change here in Harwich, every 3 years, 5 years, you got a new selectman, you got new people, I'm leaving, walking out the door. Are the things that need to happen in Harwich going to achieve if you give up that? That is the problem that people don't understand with asking for the petition in which you're asking for. Because you're gonna lose eventually, I'm gonna walk out the door, and you may not get the same superintendent that's behind me coming in the door. You only hope that the next guy comes up and wants to do it in the manner in which we're doing it. But he has to follow the state and federal rules. So you understand what I'm saying? It is great that you wanna add more to it. But what you should be doing is fighting on the state and federal levels to make sure that the rules and regulations that we have to follow are to the utmost, and that we are constantly looking at every aspect of what we do and how we do it. That's what people don't understand. It is great. I applaud you for what you're trying to achieve. The problem that you face, more so than anything, is the fact that we're late to the party has caused a huge uproar in everything that happens on Cape Cod. And what I mean by that is, if we had done our homework and done it and been educated about what we would do, it wouldn't, the problem with the ponds and everything else wouldn't be, I'm gonna use, I hate to say it this way, wouldn't just be about golf or lawns. Because we know that 85% of what the problem is sewers. Now understand this.
Right, right.
And the reason I'm gonna say this to you, the filter starts from the turf up. What do we do in the sewers? We clear all that out, go down to the sand, put a septic system in, and then feed it all in past the filter. How do you expect the grass to do its job if you supervised it and went underneath? So it's hard for me to sit here and say, I agree 100%, because I 100% back what you're talking. We try to do this all the time. But the one problem that we have is it's not a one-focus approach. It needs to be more than one-pronged. It needs to be all prongs working together in the same direction. And I think that we can achieve it because the warning signs are getting worse.
Oh,
The
yeah.
stop signs coming faster at you. Those trees are gonna hit you in the head. But we can put things in front of us that will help us get there sooner. Now, and this is why I said to you guys through education, it is huge. Because if you can get every person to be the steward of their property and know the inputs and outputs of what's coming in and out, it would only get better for the town. Because I hate to tell you, what Howard is doing doesn't mean that your neighbor in Dennis, or your neighbor in Chatham, your neighbor in Brewster is gonna do everything we're doing. And the hardest thing you face is trying to get one group to supersede the rest of the group. And what you have a better challenge in saying, okay, maybe that we should look at it from an educational standpoint and start saying, because I'll tell you this happened to me at Cranberry Valley. Old Barney tried to do what they did and go 100% organic. What did they do? They went back and said, wait a minute, we can't do it that way. We gotta do it over a period of time. And when they came to me and asked me what I was doing at Cranberry Valley, I said, I saw this coming. And I started making changes 10 years ago. So now that I'm at this point, I don't have to stress out because I'm already further down that road than you are. That's where Harwich has to do. Harwich has to get to the point where it's leading the pack instead of trying to be catching up from the back.
You know, one of the points that I see is, as you've already said, Cape Cod's unique. It's a sandbar. It's not the Berkshires.
Nope.
It's not Beacon Hill. So to have a regulating body at Beacon Hill trying to manage the entire state on one, range of usage would be difficult because we're all different. We all need different ranges. So in part, that's what these citizens petitions are doing, is establishing different ranges specifically for our specific area. I agree with you with the regulation issue. Do we give up all regulation if we say Harwich can manage fertilizers?
The hard thing is you do, if you ask the state of Massachusetts, okay, so let me put it this way.
Yeah,
If you were to say to someone, you guys have been doing this for this long, we didn't like the way you were doing it, so now we want to take over. What happens all of a sudden if there's a huge problem in the town of Harwich and the state of Massachusetts says, that's your gig, we're done, we don't want nothing to do with you. That's your problem. Don't come talk to us. You told us what you wanted.
right.
So go do it, your problem. So now your problem that you have is, let's say, we knew sewers. Maybe you could get extra money out of the state to help you with the problem. Guess what's not showing up? That extra money to help you with that problem. So this is like going to the parents, asking your parents you wanted a car, and then when you go back and say, it's got no gas, and now you're asking for gas money. That is the equation. You have a better shot at saying to the state of Massachusetts, how can we better treat Cape Cod and the man, because we know it's different than everywhere else. What else can we do
Yeah.
that as the community of Cape Cod itself, work with your state and local reps to then increase what's there and say, what else can we do to add to that? Instead of playing, because the hardest thing you face now is you got some towns doing it, some towns not. And you're gonna get that one town that's not gonna do it.
Yep.
So then it doesn't matter, to be honest with you, it don't matter what we do in Harwich. I hate to tell you this.
Right.
We could be the best #1 up here. And if Dennis ain't doing it, it's still the same puddle of water. So it's kind of counterproductive. What we need to do is educate so that the people in Harwich understand where they're at, so that we can get further down that road so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, you know, I like that, and perhaps having these citizens petitions filed and given to the legislature, it becomes a stepping stone so we can move forward. The legislature isn't required to approve these home rule petitions.
Not
But
at
it
all.
may be the stepping stone that we wake up and see that, yeah, Cape Cod wants some special attention.
But the only thing with that is, and I'll say this I'm not a political guy, but I will say this, the hardest thing that you face is,
That's always been the
and
case.
it always will be the case, there's a lot of money on Cape Cod. And money makes everything go around. And the problem that you face more than anything is getting the same people in the room to convince them that they need to make the change when it's affecting their pocketbook. And that's the hardest thing you're ever gonna face. You can tell me whatever you want to go do, I understand you. But until you get enough of the towns together to approach their reps, to sit down and say, we need to have a longer discussion about this, other than just sewers. We know sewers will make a dent. But if we can get, by the time the sewers are done, if we can get there and have an educational, so that people all around the Cape are doing what they're supposed to do, town by town, boy, will that change be drastic when the sewers are done and doing what they're
And
supposed
both Sear and Luddy support.
to. Correct. And
Support.
you'll see that change happen
So-
fast.
This is not the forum to have a political discussion, to talk about lobbying our politicians. I think we're getting a little off track here. We need to educate about turf
Turf.
and environmental effects. And if you have more things to say or questions to ask about that, Patrick, let's
Good.
go with that.
No, well, his comments were very beneficial. I wish to thank
Thank you.
Sean for his comments. I did have something, but it's left my head. About education. I received 17-plus emails from True Green. The headline was, "Your lawn will be greener than your neighbor's." All right? 17. I also got 4 mail in the letters from Lawn Doctor with the same statement right on the envelope. Your lawn will be greener than your neighbor's. So where does education start?
Starts with the homeowner.
Well,
Because the homeowner needs to understand what they want is green. So understand, just because you drive down the road and you see sign after sign that says stop at McDonald's, doesn't mean you always stop at McDonald's. So just because you get a mailing in the mail that says your lawn can be as green as the next, it becomes your responsibility. Just like when you put gas in your car, you don't put diesel in it. You
Right.
gotta be the person. Again, this is where I'm trying to tell everyone. You have to be the person. The homeowner needs to be the person.
yeah,
If it is your yard, you need to know what is happening in your yard, which affects everyone else. But if you're not allowing, if you're, as a homeowner, if you're not taking the ownership of that, then that's your problem. Not much you can do there.
well, that becomes our problem.
Well, eventually, in the end, it does,
Yeah,
but
that becomes
you
our,
only can hope that everyone wants to be in the same boat, pulling in the same direction.
yeah.
So would it be, I mean, people, and I get them too, if people are getting mailings from all these companies about, you know, and the perception is that green is what you want, green is good, I mean, eventually, should the town of Harwich be putting out a mailer or something like that, about best management practices and things like that. So if clearly they're putting out that information because they're doing it because it's getting some attention from some people. They wouldn't do it if they didn't get a response to it from maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20.
Well,
Maybe that's
so-
an avenue that the town should look at with putting it in the water bill or something sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also too, the other one, and the more that you can flood the homeowner with town meetings, Channel 18, Channel 8 now.
Yeah.
And the more that you can put in front of them in the book every year, you have in the back, make it available for people on the website, best management practices, questions you should be asking your landscaper. Those little things mean a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're gonna get a landscaper like Warren who walks in the door, that's gonna give you this true skinny of what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're gonna get someone who walks in the door that, I just picked up a lawnmower and I can come out and do your yard.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the nature of where we're at.
Is there money, I know I asked this question before, but is there money around to, like, I envision, like, if True Green Camelon is gonna put that little tag on my door knob, why can't the town put the same tag on the doorknob with 10 questions that you should ask your landscaper, or, you know, 5 bullet points from Sean here? Because again, I know I feel like I say this every time we get together and have this conversation. I'm guilty as charged when it comes to being ignorant about, less and less so, I hope, you know, as we have more of these conversations. But I think that a lot of homeowners
Mm-hmm.
just, it's not willful, you know, neglect or destruction.
They didn't go to
It's
school
just
for it.
pure not knowing.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of not, you know, people are busy, people, you know, have somebody else take care of it and just don't know what they don't know.
So-
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought about this and I'm having a conversation. Eventually, and I may not be around in this, but the town may need to have someone who's on staff.
Mm-hmm.
That's that question answer for them. That you call up and you say, listen, I'd love for you to come out, take a look at my lawn, see what's going on, tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing. It's part of what we do, you know what I mean? I've said this to the town a long time ago. I'm walking out the door. But I'm a resource all fall and all spring up until I get crazy. Call me up. It's the middle of winter. If there's no snow out there, I can look at your lawn.
You're gonna be sorry you said that.
Well, you know, I tell everyone, to be
There's,
to be honest with you,
And I call him in
Yeah,
April when he's ready to go to Italy.
I'm on the plane.
He's
leaving
literally in the
Vegas,
airport.
call to me. But again, I think eventually, whoever, the town may need someone in town as we head down that path, that they have someone that can answer questions of that nature.
There's a lot of towns.
Say again?
Post-retirement.
Post-retirement business.
So your question,
Thank you
but
much.
your question about,
Thank
can
you,
the
Pat.
town do those mailings, just real quick?
Yeah.
There's a cost associated, to go, it'd be an extra thing in the water bill. Once you get us past a certain weight, it's gonna cost more. But but there's been times where other groups have put stuff in your mailing. So if we can keep it brief and maybe give them resources to look at, you know, keep it real small with an insert, it's a start.
Well, so I think a basic problem we have here is that the state refers people to UMass's best management practice.
Right.
That's a long
131
and
pages.
not straightforward document. You can't expect a homeowner to read that thing
Correct.
No,
and come away with much of anything,
But does it-
except I don't understand this. And so I think if what we're wanting to do is refer property owners, not landscape professionals, but property owners to best management practices, those things have to be distilled and
Right.
made specific to the town of Harwich or
Yep.
Cape Cod.
I agree.
And that's
take home
the-
message, key points, yeah.
the key points, like
Yep.
one page
Mhm.
at the
I
most.
got no, and I think that as you guys go forward, as part of whatever you guys come up with, I think that's a great idea, that Howard has its best management practices. A list of basically different levels that it can achieve.
Okay, we have another,
All right,
at least one more, I don't know.
Oh, come on up, Jeff.
You
Jerry
just,
Schuman, I'm in the garden club, and been a member of the conservation committee of the garden club for a few years. A couple of things just about education. The garden club has actually put what they call a buck slip in the water bill twice now, and we were charged, I think it was $400 the first time we did it with a water reduction thing, when things were really low, 3 years ago, was that?
yeah, 2 or 3.
About 2
Yeah.
or 3.
My memory's short. Anyway, we did it, and then we did it again this past year with the food waste scrap program that we're conducting at the transfer station. And it was a great way to reach everybody, including those people who were in Florida. You know, we timed the water bill differently than the food scrap program that came out last July. The water bill thing we did early, I think in the spring. May have been around the same, but, and I frankly don't remember the cost, but I know the first time it was about $400. I think it was a shared expense, and it's a very, if you all got one, it would look like I don't know, the size of a
slip.
$1, basically. That's why they call it a buck slip, I guess. We did that. And the other thing I was thinking about when you're talking about golfers, all golfers are homeowners. And they all have lawns, and they appreciate your lawn.
Yes, they do.
So maybe there's some educational
So just
source right there
I do,
with your
I hate to
golfers.
tell you, but I do have a lot of people that come up to me on the golf.
I was gonna say, you must have questions. How do you do this?
And I said to them, follow what I do as best I can. So
Yeah.
if you see me aerifying, aerify. If you see me putting down fertilizer, apply.
What if
Put
you
down seed,
If you had a handout at the.
You could run a seminar up there,
pack
you
of
know.
flyers that you could give to
Golf
people
course, yeah.
with a little QR code to refer them to some website?
Yeah, that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
But I have a response here about water bills. Couple things. One is, we get our water bill electronically. Do those things, I don't ever remember seeing, what did you call the insert?
you don't?
buck slips.
I don't take my bill electronically.
yeah,
I don't,
Bill
the
in
less
the mail
paper,
from the
the
town
less,
of Harwich.
the less paper, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And that's just one question, which I
So
wouldn't,
that information did not go out?
Well,
But if
you
you
know,
get the bill electronically, you would have
I
gotten the
guess
books.
not. But,
Put it in our excise tax, there's other mailings.
yeah, but some people don't look at any of those. They get them all
So
electronic.
the information would not have been on the electronic bill. is
So people can sign up, a lot of departments now, like, have alerts that you can sign up for, to get alerts from the health department, to get alerts from the conservation department. When there's meetings, that's a electronic avenue that we can pursue.
Okay, so just,
Mhm.
that's probably beyond anybody in this
Yeah,
group
which
solving
is
that
good.
problem.
Brainstorming.
But the other question is, why would the town be charging the garden club to alert citizens, to remind them to do something that's gonna save the town money and save the town
You
water?
take it.
does-
as
Yes,
they can.
So, not only can they, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
so understand that the town of Harwich is a nonprofit organization, is not allowed to solicit or do any of that nature. That would be called solicitation, and they're not allowed to do it. So, understand,
I
no
didn't
matter
realize
what
they
it
were
is.
lawyer, too.
Yep, so if the town did that, the moment they went out for votes, everyone would want to send a flyer out for a vote.
Yep.
That is why they don't do it. So understand, there is very strong limitations to what they can and can't do. They can post all day out front of the building. They can post in the book if they so, advertising, and as long as it's not advertising, it's just a flyer stating X, Y, and Z. But if you put it in a flyer and you ask them to do it, it could be called solicitation.
yeah, okay, all right.
Sorry for that.
Working with the water department.
So they were working within them, so.
Yeah.
Okay, is there, we have another comment, question?
Hi, I'm Rob Mador. I handle soil science and sand and soil science for Robert Hour. I'm a Penn State guy, not a UMass guy. But, you know, there's a little of
Yeah,
this.
a little of that, little.
So I have a 17-part question for Sean. No, for, what we do at Robert Hour is we do an amazing amount of testing constantly on all the products that we sell, and there's a lot of intake. There's, what comes in must go out, so we repurpose a lot of products and sell them in different forms going out. So I am always a resource that the general public can come to. I'll help them with testing, I'll show them how to test, I'll teach them how to analyze what they have. Oftentimes I'll go and I'll do testing with them and I'll show them. So there are people out there that will help. As far as doing a mailer goes and the weight of the mailer and whatnot, if you can get a QR code in front of somebody in whatever shape, whether it's electronically sent to them or it's in paper, all they have to do is scan it. Now, everybody's got a phone that they can scan. That QR code can lead you to a website that can direct you to best management practices like Sean was talking about, which is super, super important.
And scale it back. It doesn't have to be 130 pages. We
No.
can scale, the town of Harwich can scale that.
And do a
back.
summary.
We can do a summary of the process and what you
Right.
need. as you need.
And it could also lead people to YouTube videos so that they could learn how to interpret a soil test. Because when you, like what you were saying before, when you get a soil test back, it's Greek, and there's a lot of things on there that people might not understand, like cation exchange and levels of nitrates and whatnot. Some are good, some are bad. People may see like the phosphorus is high, but when you learn how to interpret that, it's really not, it's not a problem. Also, you were talking about the food waste and whatnot. You should be aware that through Mass DEP, they have an amazing amount of grant opportunities through their waste and recycling grant program. I would definitely look into that and see what the town can take advantage of, because there's a lot of them that are specifically earmarked for municipalities, as well as there's a lot that are earmarked for businesses such as ours. So there's definitely money out there. I'm constantly researching grants and just thinking about like what we're talking about here. There's definitely grants that are applicable to you that might be, up to $2 million. They could be 50 grand, they could be 10 grand, depends on what the situation is. But there is money available. What else was I gonna blab on about? While I don't think the removal of herbicides and pesticides completely from landscapes is a great idea. I do think it's a good idea to get dangerous herbicides and pesticides out of the hands of people who are non-licensed applicators. So the fact that I can go down to Ace Hardware, nothing against Ace, any place like that, Ocean State Job Lot or whatever, and I can buy all the Roundup and Ortho Ground Clear and whatnot, and have no idea how to use it. And you think, well, more is better, so I'm going to spray this weed until it's like a rainforest over here. Well, that's not how you do it. So along the lines of what you've been talking about, of getting those out of the hands of everybody, I think a better approach is to get it out of the hands of people who are non-educated, because it's the homeowners that are the biggest problem. It's not the licensed applicator. It's a guy like Sean, or someone who you're paying to do it on a property. They only want to use the minimum amount because that costs them money. So if they use extra, they're losing money. So homeowners, it's a very different situation. They're not educated. They probably might not even be able to read a bag or figure out how to set their broadcast spreader or understand parts per million. There's a lot of different scientific equations in the applications of those products. And 99% of the time, I guarantee you, if you sat outside a place that sold that stuff and you questioned people how to put it down, they would have absolutely no idea. And that is a definite dangerous situation. So I just thought I would point that out.
Can I comment on that real
Yeah,
quick?
sure.
So at our last meeting, our first one we had with Russ Norton, a couple people brought up people needing a license or proof that they did some certification or did some educational training to be able to apply. It sounds like you might be in favor of, like, for the town of Harwich. I guess Barnstable has it and somebody else, just some kind of proof that you're educated to be able to do it. Sounds like you might be in favor of something like that in order for homeowners to,
I think it's a good idea.
yeah.
So, listen, I always say this, more education cannot hurt
Yeah.
anyone.
Absolutely.
And I say that from every aspect of life. It doesn't matter if it's turf or whatever we do. The more that we can learn, we're computers, we try to compute and figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah.
If you
And
can
while-
learn,
Right.
you should be learning.
And while the town of Harwich cannot like recommend certain companies necessarily, we can have a list of companies that have completed said certifications or something.
And the hardest thing is, we're starting in the beginning, so it looks like it's an unbelievable task. But once you start the process, and then people start feeling that it's the norm, it will change.
Yeah.
That's what you have to understand,
Right.
it will change.
Yeah,
The golf course business was that
Mhm.
40 years ago, so.
And there's definitely some organic substitutions for the synthetic fertilizers that are going down. As part of best practices, aeration is huge, whether you're using sand or whether you're using compost. Composting lawns is incredibly important, increases the nutrients, it increases the drainage, and decreases the amount of synthetics that you would have to put down. Like Sean was saying, if you can get ahead of it, instead of being reactive, then the whole situation is so much better off. Also, when it comes to building code, like I could totally see as part of a building code, minimum standards for topsoil, so that people stand a better chance of being successful. And instead of having, 2 inches of topsoil, that all the stuff that you're putting down is just gonna race to the groundwater, actually have 5 or 6 inches that's gonna hold it. It's gonna provide a situation where you can get rapid root growth development, which is key in repair, and it's key in staying ahead of funguses and blights to the lawn. So that to me, I think would be a good start.
So I have a question about your testing programs at Howard.
Sure.
You sell bulk landscaping products, right?
Correct.
And do you regularly test those, like any product, like something you would sell, like a compost product that you're selling?
Quarterly.
So you could do landscape contractors who buy, hundreds of yards of that stuff to use throughout a season. Do they request your test results? Are you?
Good ones do.
And so I guess you're proposing that there should be minimum standards for, like, putting down sufficient amount of topsoil on a
On a fresh build, yeah,
on a fresh build.
yeah. Or even a remodeling situation, or someone's going in and replacing a septic tank. There should be minimum standards.
Well, what about the common practice of clearing a lot, which we've seen recently, actually, where not only is all the vegetation removed, all the topsoil is also removed, probably goes to your lot to be mixed in with
It
other
could,
topsoil.
it could.
Should we be actually passing building code that prohibits stripping topsoil anywhere, say,
So-
beyond?
Understand this, a good builder isn't losing that loan.
Right.
A good builder does not, that is gold. That is liquid
So
gold.
he may be, and exactly, that's the reason they're stripped off some lot where a cheap house is going up and sold to go somewhere else, which
Correct. They
means
should be required to
some lot is gonna
leave.
end up without sufficient topsoil, and
Correct.
some other lot is gonna have a lot of extra topsoil.
I think it's
Shouldn't we be doing something?
It's situational. If you were to cut down trees and clear a lot that has 100-year growth on it, you're probably only gonna have 2 or 3 inches of any decent layer of topsoil, It also is, when, the situation doesn't always present itself when you're, if you're doing a septic or you're doing a remodel and you're working within confined spaces, you're not gonna have a place to stack up 500 yards of topsoil, So there are, in a perfect world, yeah, of course, But is it always going to be practical? Probably, most of the time not, just because of the way that job sites work and people, you need parking and you need places to store other stuff. It's just, but I don't think, the commingling of topsoils from different lots, I don't think that is detrimental to the situation.
Mark has a question, but I just want to follow up. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you're suggesting that there be some constraints put on topsoil,
Minimum standards.
but there's another part to that question, which is, okay, you're putting down topsoil. There's going to be some analysis associated with that topsoil.
Mhm.
Do you have an idea or a concept of what that should look like so there's sufficient nutrients in the topsoil, but not so much nutrients? Like if you do a mixture of topsoil and compost, is some of that just gonna end up leaching out into the groundwater again, for example? Is there some,
I don't think
I'm
there's,
not asking you for the number, but
yeah.
would you have a number to tell people or to guide what you're doing so that these are the limits we should be working in when we're selling,
So,
topsoil?
I'll give you a
for-
gist. I happen to use Robert Hour's products, and I'll call him up and I'll say, hey, I need a 60-40 mix. 60-40, 60 parts sand, 40% organic matter. He'll come back in and say, okay, I got X, Y, and Z, and then we'll talk back and forth, obviously, because we're talking a different language, about exactly what he's gonna put in and add in for me. Now, he'll take the 2 mil sand, which is what we usually use, and then we'll incorporate both organic matter and maybe some loam. So then we get the mix that we want. Now, Cape Cod is predominantly a sand base, but there are spots where you want a sandy loam. Now, when you look in soils, there's the big pyramid that we all talk about, and that pyramid tells you what kind of soil you're growing in. Well, Cape Cod's always been a sandy loam. So you need to have a good stand, you'd be adding maybe a little bit more loam to hold a little bit of moisture, whereas before it used to be that you don't want to hold so much loam, you'd rather have a little bit more sand. So everyone's different. Every spot's different. That's why I say every piece of property. If I'm in North and Brewster and I'm straight sand underneath, I may want to add a lot more loam. If I'm here on this end and I'm a lot more loamy, I'm going to use a little bit more sand. So every property has to be different. Your house is going to be different than his house is going to be different than his house. You have to look, and that's why I said to you before, soil tests are huge. You're not just looking at what's in the soil, you're looking at the makeup of the soil.
I think a lot of it too is homeowners accepting the responsibility to accept the best practices, It's put on the homeowners, whether they accept it or not. Soil testing, everything else, anything else that they're applying outside, it's up to them to educate themselves. And until you get people, or you provide a situation where it's a lot easier for people to educate themselves, it's just not gonna happen. So I think being proactive, providing some sort of mechanism that people can interact with in some way, shape, or form, is I think that's gonna be the way to go, providing education in layman's terms, and being able to have some kind of a setup where you can have feedback, where people can ask you questions if they can't figure it out. Well, I think that's the town, if they really want to solve some of the problems, they're going to have to provide some solutions.
I think there's a component here that's left right out of the conversation that's really important. The last 50 years, the methods in the excavating business in particular have changed. Years ago, you go in and strip a house lot, peeled off the wood loam and piled it. Everybody always salvaged the subsoil, the hardening. I can't tell you when the last time I saw anybody do that on a site job. That sublayer on any site plan is always referred to as a B layer now. If you talk to anybody that's got into the equipment business or the excavating business of any fashion in the last 20 years and ask them to go out and push up a pile of hardening, they won't know what you're talking about. Okay?
Yeah.
And that material is the precursor to topsoil. All it's lacking is the organic.
Right. Right.
Years ago, I used to call it hamburger helper. You didn't have enough loam, You peeled up the hardening and you rolled it all together.
Yeah,
Instant loam,
yeah, absolutely.
you
Yep.
know?
So is that,
It becomes that barrier.
No. Everywhere you go, every piece of land in the world has a different soil makeup, okay? But customarily, in this area, you've got topsoil, you've got subsoil, then you go into the substrata, which is, as a rule, sandy material. If there's a clay layer in there someplace, that's gonna vary from location to location. The soil makeup is different all over the place. Barnstable County is not a single sand pit or a sandbar. There's places on Barnstable County that have rocks you wouldn't believe.
meeting I gotta get to.
thank you for being here, Sean.
Thank you.
Interrupt you.
Yeah,
I guess,
I told you, anytime you need me,
Thank
give me a
you.
call.
we can continue having a
Thanks, Sean.
chat.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
But that, that hardening layer, that was always salvaged for driveways, road bases, everything that it was done. All of that stuff is now, in many cases, there's a recycled product that substitutes for it. Very often it's crushed concrete or a product they call T-base. T-base largely is recycled asphalt. And, I mean, I can show you a house lot right down near the Rotary that was built about a year and a half ago. And the company came in there, they cleared the land, dug the basement, never saved a speck of topsoil, a speck of hardening, backfilled the foundation with crushed concrete, and did the rough grade and put topsoil on top of that. It was fast, but a ridiculous waste. I mean, the methods have changed.
so when you say they never saved topsoil, where did it go? They sold it? and
Buried it.
it's- They buried it.
Yeah, if you got a side hill lot and you carve out a spot to put in a
They used it
foundation,
for fill.
generally, well, yeah, they did, basically, but they still had to truck in material that needed extra material to bring the grade up to where it was. Whatever they had was cast aside. They dug out the stumps, hauled the stumps off, got rid of them like they're supposed to. But whatever small amount of topsoil was there was just cast aside, and then it was covered right up. It does represent a cost to do that, and it represents a cost to handle all that stuff, but the methods have changed. The types of equipment that are used have changed. In many cases, it's much quicker than it used to be, and it's all about the simple fact that time is money. However, there's no substitute for doing a job correctly. You know, I can think of a site job that I just saw recently on Queen Anne Road, and I was actually admired the fact that it was done so well, and they did salvage the hardening and they put it back on top, and they established a great big parking area. And I looked at that and I said, that was a quality job. They did it good, And I see another job site not too far away where none of that was taken into account. The methodology in that particular site was totally different. Different company, different people, different everything. And I understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, but I wouldn't call it a preferred method.
They buried all the hardening. and
That's right.
Everything, I know what
That's
you're
right.
talking about.
Yep, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I go
And-
by and shake my head.
Yeah. So I mean, that stuff, these are real factors. And to get to the root of the problem, the Yellow Pages died for a reason. People don't look at the phone book anymore. They use the internet. Marketing, marketing strategy, mass marketing, once you've established a criteria and a vein of information, now you got something to tell people. But I think what's probably going to be very prudent in this application is to engage someone in the marketing business and learn how to solicit the information, get it out to people, and get it understood. To begin with, people don't have the time or the interest or the inclination to sit down and read anything that's lengthy. They need to be spoon-fed bits and pieces. People absorb it quickly. They absorb it better when they get it again a few minutes later and a few minutes later, and I know for a fact we're all guilty of it because everybody in this room looks at the internet. And that's what's happening. And the stuff that you're learning, son of a gun, it works.
Yeah. It's
Right.
about accessibility. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
point that you were making.
That's
I agree
absolutely.
with you again about homeowners, but again, from personal experience, where do you begin? I think the difficulty that a lot of people have is, where do I start to even begin to understand this? Where if it's accessible, if it's marketed, and if it's simplified into layman's terms, okay, I can get on board there. Okay, I can do that. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to, again, like ramping on. How do you get people to ramp on? And I think
Right,
that if
right.
you could figure that out,
Mhm.
to your point, Mark, about marketing, that'd be a good place to start.
I
So-
think,
Sure.
So
I agree.
these days, what marketing is all about is social media campaigns. And actually, in CPC, one of the members of CPC is a younger person, professional, who does that somehow as part of a business, and she's gotten involved in sort of trying to, because CPC has a similar issue of just trying to educate
Mm-hmm.
voters about what CPC does.
Yeah.
You know, and social media here would be something, it's not something we normally think about, but go ahead.
So I was gonna say, for, you know, if I had someone who was starting from scratch, there's great information out there. Like some people I've turned on to at work, if you go to Penn State Extension, you can take a really incredible soil science class for $75. And it teaches you from start to finish the very basics that people need to know on Penn State Extension. I highly recommend that. Also, if you, not to promote our company, but if you were to go to our website and you look up our organic products, you will see that we have gone into great detail for someone who doesn't know much about soil science to someone who is at the top level of soil science. That's the kind of information that people need to have access to. So if you were to look at, we have a product called Turf Grow, which is our compost, our 2 mm sand, and our topsoil that's designed for lawns, and it's specifically designed for a reason, so that you can have the maximum organic potential with the least amount of watering. And there's an explanation of cation exchange in there. So there are great resources out there for people. They just have to be made aware that they are there. But there's good stuff out there.
Maybe consolidate it in a specific place, so, because there's all this great information in so many different places. And,
I think the QR code is a great idea.
yeah, I like that.
I mean, even if you had, I'm sure people would be willing to put out lawn signs, like, what would be, you could get people to volunteer to have that QR code in the garden, like, click on this. Because, again, it's about simplicity. I think not everybody's gonna go on Instagram either. We had this conversation a while ago, but if you can point your phone at a QR code, and it's gonna bring you to
Mhm.
some of the places that you mentioned,
Right.
it's about access and ease of access as well, you know, just looking at it from that
Yeah.
perspective.
The Harwich Pond Coalition is doing exactly that,
Mhm.
making little lawn signs with a QR code on it for people, basically to direct people to
To go to the
Harwich Pond
website.
Coalition website with information about cultural practices that favor pond health.
Mhm.
But it's not that different from what you're talking about, and, I don't know, Conservation Commission, I don't know, might be something to talk about whether,
Yeah, we have a website, but it certainly could be revamped, and we could have different sections. And we could have a whole section on this, obviously.
well, the commission, I mean, could the commission consider doing a program with lawn signs where people buy a lawn sign for some nominal sum that would cover the cost of the lawn sign, where people would be stating, you know, I'm following
These practices.
town of Harwich best management practices for growing a Cape-friendly lawn
Yeah.
and, or Cape-friendly landscape, maybe with a QR code.
This
which
is how I
directs
do it,
people to best management practices.
That sounds to
First,
me
we
like
gotta
something you
develop
would
the best
incorporate
management
into
practices.
your marketing program.
Right, and then somebody.
First, we gotta develop the best management practices. Let's
Yeah,
not do the signs yet. Let's figure out
Well,
what we
I'm
want for
curious about
BMPs.
whether there are actually state grants that would be available.
I'll
to
look.
Actually, yes, as,
You mentioned the grants that are available to get the,
For waste and recycling.
for waste recycling.
well, whether there would be state money that would be available to help the town reduce the state's comprehensive document on best management practices to
Oh,
digestible information that citizens could digest and, maybe a half-page summary and then maybe a couple of pages.
I wonder if it's something even that USDA or something would have.
It has to be sort of specific to our,
No, understood.
I would think the USDA would be more prone to go into agricultural aspects of it.
Yeah, they get a little bit into, no. Anyway, disregard. The
I
brain was
wonder if
just,
National Sanitation Foundation would be a place to look for direction from contaminants.
what was that? What place?
National Sanitation Foundation?
Let me look into it. Doesn't hurt to look. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Rob.
very much.
Thank you.
Make a plug, town meeting, Monday night, probably Tuesday night too. So there are a number of articles on. We have Patrick's articles, the citizen petition articles. We have a CPC article in too for study, design and permitting of the, a boardwalk to the Herring River pedestrian bridge. And a few other things to look at. Yep. And the other big ticket item is a Phase 3A for the sewer system, potentially sewer Great Sand Lake. So I'll just put a plug in while we're online that go to town meeting if you can, Monday night and possibly Tuesday night. And we'll see you here on Wednesday anyways. And I'll be at CPC on Thursday.
I got a question. Can we get a water test for the reservoir up by the Herring Rock? I don't know why it smells really bad up there.
Does it?
Yeah.
Smells.
And there's a lot of algae in the water and stuff.
We'll check it.
Yeah.
I can check it. I can check the algae content anyway.
But the smell is something I haven't experienced up there before.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it was pretty stinky last year, but not this early in the season. Yeah, we can take a look at that. Oh, boy.
Don't mean to bring good news here.
No, it's good.
What
It's
I
all,
observed yesterday,
no,
I was
I
up
need
there.
it. I appreciate it, and I'll talk again about a guardrail for them. Well,
I see it in next meeting,
Well,
you know? I
Yeah.
see it in next meeting.
people in the pond coalition were requesting a couple of additional ponds to be added to PALs. Now,
Uh-huh.
I'm forgetting whether West Reservoir was one of those.
we can add it. I would really like to.
But I don't know how PALs is running this year.
Well, we are hopeful to have a natural resource director in the next couple weeks. The position's been offered. We're just waiting to hear back
Oh,
from the person.
great, well, that's progress.
But still, so I did also get a hold, APCC has reached out and just to make sure that we want to still participate in their water quality sampling this summer. And I checked in with accounting, because we don't have anybody in natural resources right now, and that's who manages that account, that the money is set aside for that, so we're gonna get them ramped up too.
Great.
So we're hoping not to have too much of a blip. in the program.
Good. Is there anything else we need to
I
talk
have
about?
nothing else.
Well, I think we should, I move we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That was fantastic.
It was. I was very impressed with him.